Hi guys, in this video I wanted to talk about the diagram associated with imposing a per unit tax on producers. So I won't be doing any algebra, but it's useful just to look at the diagram so we understand exactly what's going on. So here is the case. I've got a perfectly competitive market in equilibrium. We have a downward sloping demand curve and an upward sloping supply curve, and we have P star and Q star, our equilibrium price and quantity associated with that intersection. If it's the case that I decided to place a per unit tax on producers, then that means that every time that the producers sell a unit of good, they have to pay some money to the government. This is going to result in a shift up of the supply curve because relative to the relationship that the producers had between the price of the good and the amount that they were willing to supply at that price, now they need that original price plus the amount of the tax that they know now that they're going to have to give to the government. So the supply curve is going to shift up like this, and the vertical distance between the original supply curve S and the new supply curve S plus tax is going to be exactly the amount of the tax. There's going to be a new equilibrium price and quantity associated with that intersection. I'm going to call that Q prime and P prime. Note that Q prime is less than Q star, so as a result of the tax, it's the case that we're not producing as much as we would be if we weren't interfering with this market. Now with this new equilibrium, we know that it's the case that in the market, the consumers are going to pay P prime. This is the consumer's price. But now, when it's the case that the producers get that P prime, they're going to have to take some of that money and give that to the government. So the price that the producers are seeing is going to be P prime minus tax. Visually, we can see it like this. If we draw a line down from our new supply curve equilibrium down until it hits the old supply curve, and then we can run the horizontal curve across. So note here, the price that the supplier sees and that the consumer sees is now different. The producer is getting P prime minus the tax, and the consumer is paying P prime. Note that as we expect, as a result of the tax, it's the case that the consumers are paying more and the producers are getting less. So now it's the case that we can do some welfare analysis with this graph. Our tax revenue is going to be the amount of the tax times the amount traded. So we're dealing with a per unit tax here, so it's the amount of the tax per unit multiplied by how many units we're trading in the market. Note again that the height between S plus tax, a new supply curve, and our original supply curve is the amount of the tax. So if we isolate the rectangle, which has the height of that tax and also the width of Q prime, then the area of that red rectangle is going to be the amount of tax revenue that the government gets from the tax. Now we can think of consumer surplus, and I'll use a green colour. Our consumer surplus is always going to be the area below the demand curve above the price. Now the price, we said before that the consumers pay is P prime, so the consumer surplus is going to be equal to this triangle here. The producer surplus is going to be the area above the supply curve, below the price that the suppliers get per the unit. Now we know that the price that the suppliers are getting per unit is P prime minus tax. Since it's the case that the supply curve, the true supply curve, which represents the marginal cost for each quantity for the firm, hasn't changed, I'm going to isolate the producer surplus by looking above the original supply curve, below the price minus tax. The last thing is to think about is our deadweight loss. Our deadweight loss occurs because it's the case that we've interfered in the market and now we're producing at some point that's different from the perfectly competitive equilibrium. Here it's the case that we can see that we're producing less than Q star, we're producing Q prime. The reason why deadweight loss exists in this example is because actually the marginal cost of every unit between Q prime and Q star is less than the marginal benefit that would be afforded from the consumption of those units between Q prime and Q star. So there's benefits from trade there that we haven't realised. That's really at the heart of the deadweight loss problem with taxes. Okay, that's good. So that's our diagram regarding placing a unit tax on producers. Thanks so much for watching the video. I hope you liked the video and learnt a lot. Please check out my channel for more videos on economics and maths help.